The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you who's already joined the webinar. We still see some attendees signing in, but we can go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is Business Agility and Adapting to Change with SAFe 5.0. This is brought to you by Swift Ease from Digite and Scale Agile, the provider of SAFe. So let's get started, and we'll go ahead with some of the initial introductions and housekeeping. The agenda for today is, as I just said, we'll start with some introductions, and I'll quickly introduce Digite to those of you who may not know about us. And then I'm going to hand over the mic to today's main speaker, Luke Homan, who will speak on the topic of business agility and adapting to change with SAFe 5.0. And at the end of the webinar, we will hopefully have a good set of questions for Luke and a good conversation around that. Just so you know, the webinar is being recorded, and we will make the recording available to you after the webinar. For the questions, please use the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar panel that you will see, and feel free to enter the questions anytime. We will try and take as many of them as possible as time permits towards the end of the webinar at the Q&A session. So with that, let's get started. Our speaker today, Luke Homan, he's the SAFe Framework contributor and principal consultant at Scale Agile. My name is Mahesh Singh. I'm going to be the host, and I'm a co-founder and senior vice president of marketing at Digite. A little bit more about Luke. I've known Luke for several years now, and I can say with complete confidence he's probably the most energetic and enthusiastic speaker that I've seen, especially when you see him live on stage. Hopefully in the session today, you will see some of that energy coming across. As I said, he's a SAFe Framework contributor and the principal consultant at Scale Agile. Right before that, he was founder and CEO of Continuo, which is formerly known as the Innovation Games Company. And this is when I got to know him through another common friend of ours, especially when he was doing the Agile planning sessions. And I'm sure I'm mischaracterizing the activity, but he was doing this with the city of San Jose, and one of the real success stories that any government organization has seen in terms of planning and budgeting and sort of successfully applying the principles of Agile to that activity. Luke is the author of 4 books, several articles, and he's just an amazing all-round personality. He's internationally recognized as an expert in Agile software, clearly. He's helped co-found the first Agile conference in 2003, and I think probably that's one of the Agile conferences probably where I saw you, Luke, first. And he's also served on the board of Agile Alliance. Before I give it over to Luke, let me just give you a quick overview of Digite. So we have been a pioneer in collaborative products for geographically distributed teams, something that's possibly become even more relevant in the current crazy times that we live in. And I hope that you will, you're all keeping safe firstly, and making sure to look after your loved ones. And hopefully, what you see from today's webinar will help you in terms of being able to continue to do that. We have about 1 million users around the world of our various products that cover Lean Kanban, Agile LM, Scale Agile, and project portfolio management. And of course, Swift Ease is our built for SAFe lean and visual SAFe tool, and I'll give you a little bit more about the tool somewhat later in the webinar. So with that, over to Luke. Luke, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us today.
So thank you so much. Can you hear me okay, Mahesh?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, fantastic. And everyone, I'd like to build on our relationship on this call. I had worked with Mahesh and his team on a very large Agile transformation a few years ago, and it was really enjoyable. For me, one of the tests is whether a company practices Agile or just tells other people to practice Agile. At Scaled Agile, we like to use the phrase, we drink our own champagne. We actually do PI planning. We actually do retrospectives. We actually do inspect and adapts. And what I really enjoyed about working with Mahesh and his team was that they're practicing Agilists. Yes, they have a tool, and we'll learn about the tool today, but I really enjoy working with people who practice Agile as opposed to people who just talk about Agile. So we're here to talk today about scaling business agility with SAFe 5.0. And to really frame that conversation, we have to start by looking at where the economy, the global economy, and where the world is headed. What does the future really look like? Because we have to have some perspective of the future in order to make success happen for us and for others. So let's start by looking at a quote from Mick Kirsten, who wrote a book that I highly recommend, and I have read this book, Project to Product. And when you look at what's happening with things like Mark Andreessen at Andreessen Horowitz saying that software is eating the world, when you look at the fact that trains or trucks or planes or cars are embedding sensors in the Internet of Things, cities have smart lighting. In fact, for a variety of reasons, I recently had to install a new garage door. And my new garage door, because the old one broke, it comes with a sensor so that when you open up the door to your garage, the light automatically turns on, and an iPhone app that connects the garage door opener to your house Wi-Fi, so that if you felt like it, you could use your iPhone or your Android phone to open the garage door on the way home. So if you really think about what's happening, is software is everywhere, and it's the companies who really master large-scale software delivery who are going to define the economic landscape that's in the future. Now that landscape is critical because we know that there have been major technological revolutions, and this is from the book by Carlota Perez, another book I could highly recommend, although it's a bit drier than Mick's book. But Carlota really points out like these major turning points that we know and we've studied: the Industrial Revolution, steam and railways, steel and heavy engineering, and oil. Now we're seeing the age of software and digital, and you can kind of quibble or debate about when it really started and how long it's going to last, but it's undeniable that the acceleration of the internet and the changes here are really quite profound. Now, when you look at how the world changes through these major disruptions, there's usually three phases. There's an installation period, there's a turning point, and there's a deployment period. And again, Mick argues, and we don't see how we could disagree with him, if you will, that we're in the turning point. We're at the stage where we kind of get how to build scalable systems. Part of my background is in software architecture. So, you know, we have a lot of patterns out there, you know, in terms of building scalable systems and globalized systems and internationalized systems. We're starting to figure out things like data rights and data privacy. And so we're in this turning point where either businesses really master the new technology or they're going to die out. And you can start to see that. One of the companies that I know uses SAFe is Witronics. And Witronics is a company that is building Internet of Things and analytics software for efficient management of railway system. And so when you look at what Witronics is doing, they're a company that's mastering the new technology. Now, once that happens, the new era kicks in, and you can start to see some evidence of companies that you could argue are part of the new era, like an Amazon or an Apple, who are really mastering these technologies and the ability to create software. Now, are we here? Well, Mick talks about the BMW group. We look at Amazon and Amazon merging with Whole Foods. We see Tesla, which in some ways models itself as a rolling computer. And Mahesh and I, actually, as it turns out, we live very close to each other. So we're not only professional friends, we live very close to each other. I live in Sunnyvale, California, and Mahesh lives in Cupertino. And one of the things that we were talking about as we were getting ready for this webinar is the fact that certain things to us feel very normal. So in the Bay Area, we've seen self-driving cars now for more than 10 years. We've seen Teslas from the moment they came out. So in the Bay Area, you can see why the world is so, or the investors are so excited about how companies are evolving. And the one that I found most fascinating in these statistics is that Apple went from never building a watch to the biggest watchmaker in the world in a few years because of tech and the relentless focus on customer centricity and design thinking that tech enables. Now, how are we going to move forward? Well, the way that we're going to move forward is to really understand how it's to understand the problem that we're solving. So we can't move forward if we don't understand the problem. And so we have to look at the problem itself. And as I was able to study in my early career under Jerry Weinberg, and Jerry Weinberg has written some great classic books and some wonderful things. And Jerry often had the quote that it's not a technological problems. There's no technical problems. There are people problems. And so when we start to look at the people problems, we realize that it's organizations and managerial frameworks of the past that prevent us from moving to the future. So now we're going to move from the world of disruption and of software development into the world of organizational structure, management, and change. And we're going to leverage some of the work of John Kotter. And he talks about how we manage the systems, the structures, the cultures, and how the ideas of the past are not really positioning us up for the future. So to understand that, we have to kind of understand how we've migrated. Now, Mahesh is running a small and nicely growing company. I've been a serial entrepreneur until we were acquired by Scaled Agile, and I know from my own experience that you always start with a network. You have a small group of committed people who have this kind of amorphous structure. When you're working at a startup, you do what needs to be done, right? So if Mahesh walked into work today and he needed to help his marketing team do some brand management or build out the website, he would just do it. It's not necessarily his job, but in a smaller organization, you just start with a network. You're completely focused on the customer. You're all working together, and you're working really hard as this kind of dynamic structure. But then what happens is you become successful, and to become successful, you have to manage scale. So you need scale to really be successful. So you start to add traditional organizational structures. These are not bad. These are good. These are needed so that we can have stability, execution, and structure. But the problem is that as we become more skillful in our hierarchy, that hierarchy takes over and smashes the network, because that hierarchy is so powerful and so strong, it can actually impede innovation. Now, what John Kotter says is, look, we can't throw out the scale and the stability of the hierarchy, but we can't let the hierarchy throw out and smash the network. And John calls it a dual operating system. We need the ability to be both innovative and network while we are also scaling through hierarchies and structures. Now, that dual operating system needs to have this efficiency structure and this innovation structure. And notice the key to this, to me personally, is in the lower right. The key to the network of innovation and the key to efficiency and stability is to focus on customer centricity. How do we understand our customer? How do we serve their needs? Well, it turns out we have an operating system in SAFe. And that operating system is fundamentally the value stream network. The value stream is the set of processes and activities that we do inside a business to produce value to an internal or external customer. Now, if I'm building, let's say I'm working for an insurance company and I have an internal claims processing or claims adjusting act. Well, then my customer is internal, but I still have a value stream. If I'm external, or if I'm a product organization like Digite, I have a customer and it's more easily thought of as the actual customer paying me money. But the reality is this, in both cases, I have a value stream that has a triggering condition, a sequence of steps, and value provided. And most especially for the digital age in SAFE, we're going to highlight the continuous delivery pipeline, which is the set of activities that we want to employ to release value on demand to our customers. Now, SAFE 5.0, in kind of we call this lovingly the big picture. And it is a big picture. It has a lot of content, but we need that content to be able to manage the value of what's going on. Now, this big picture doesn't live in isolation. The big picture lives with content. It lives and is supported by tooling. It's supported by infrastructure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over the deck back to Mahesh so he can talk about how some of Digite's tools support the application of the business agility that we need in the big picture. And then he's going to hand it back to me, and I'm going to talk about some of the competencies. And that's these items. These items in the circle that I'm circling right now are the 7 core competencies of business agility. And I'm going to specifically talk about Agile product delivery and lean portfolio management. But Mahesh, I'm going to hand it back to you. I got to remember to make sure I know how to do this, and I'm going to make you the presenter.
All right. Thank you, Luke. And let me just go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can see this. And so, folks, just a quick introduction to the tool that we offer for people who are implementing SAFE. It's called Swift Ease, where the ease is a wordplay on Agile, Enterprise Agility with SAFE. Just a quick, overview of what the product enables you to do. So, firstly, it's a very visual product that allows for all of the different levels of work that you do in SAFE, and depending on the overall, scope of your implementation for SAFE, is it really lets you define. It firstly provides you an out-of-the-box hierarchy of these boards that let you manage work at any of these 4 levels. It provides you a configurable ability to set up your value streams that Luke was just referring to, that is applicable at each level, and then be able to work and manage your work much more easily with the tooling that's available to you. It, of course, supports both SAFE 4.5 for those who are still on the 4.5 framework, and 5.0 as well. It provides for you to be able to manage with a very customizable hierarchy of work that you do. So depending on what you call your different work items at different levels, it lets you really map your own processes and your own way of working into the system. And then based on that, you can do this entire roll-up of status information from child cards all the way up to the parent, so that at all levels, stakeholders are able to understand what is going on with the work that's being done with that. One of the key things that it lets you do, especially when you're in a distributed environment with teams in multiple locations, and of course we see that with almost all our customers, is the ability to virtually work with the tool and have people sort of feel they're part of the same environment. It lets you do virtual PI planning, for example, and helps you track dependencies across teams and even across multiple arts if you have a large enough project, and highlights to you the conflicts that you might have in terms of dependencies between work that's being done by different teams, and resolve them as part of that. Gives you extensive analytics for your overall work status, starting from all teams, all PIs, to a specific PI, down even to a specific sprint level progress information, so that you have complete control on the overall performance of the work that's being done. And finally, for those of you who are focused also a lot on the lean aspects of your work and are looking at a continuous improvement efforts of your work as you as you work on delivering your product, it provides you an extensive set of capabilities around lean and being able to use your flow metrics to understand how you're improving your delivery of value to your customers. And with that, I'm going to get you back to Luke.
You know, Mahesh, I want to actually talk a little bit more before I move on about safe events and things like PI planning. If you actually look at the SAFE framework, there are a number of events that are very important, and I'm going to circle them. One of them is PI planning, and of course, that is, in a sense, the most central event of SAFE itself. After we form our teams and our Agile release trains, which are working on delivering value, we have this very critical event of PI planning. There's other events too that are critical, like over here I'm circling the inspect and adapt, which is how we can go through and making sure that we're organizing a team of team-based retros. And of course, SAFE is neutral on if a given team wants to practice Scrum or Kanban, and I know you feel the same way. Swifties supports both Scrum and Kanban at a team level. And notice that a team has a retro, and that's a central activity for a team, and it's a central activity for teams of teams. But we're all learning how to do this in distributed ways. And I would invite all of our listeners to know that we have published many guidelines on how to run distributed PI planning. Last week, Scaled Agile had its first distributed PI planning, and we spent 3.5 days working as a global team on PI planning. We had to adjust time zones. Mahesh, I know Digite is a global company. I know you have operations around the world, as does Scaled Agile. So when you're doing these distributed events, you're working on things like adjusting time zones. You're working on ways to coordinate and collaborate, and you definitely need tools to help you. It is, and I would say that it's important to remember for everyone on the call that we're using a compelling and powerful tool for this webinar, but a webinar isn't a collaborative experience. Mahesh and I are talking and we're presenting information, but we're not really working together. And so you need other kinds of tools to do the work of PI planning and to really engage in that activity. Now I'm going to keep going, and I want to talk about how do we bring the focus back through these competencies to bring these great solutions to the marketplace. Now, what we're really looking for is that the entire organization, not just the development organization, and in fact, one of the mistakes is to think that business agility is about technical agility. Business agility is about having the entire organization engaged in continuous delivery and management. I'm going to give a bit of a tease. I've been working with our marketing team to publish a Safe for Marketing Teams white paper, and that will hopefully come out in the next few weeks. And we're very excited about showing how marketing organizations and marketing teams can apply business agility and Agile and Safe to be more effective. Now, what we need to do is we need to look at how we can be successful with Safe. Now, this means that we have to look at all of the activities, and notice you're starting to see things that you haven't seen before. Finance. How does finance support agility? Legal. If I'm releasing my software continuously in that pipeline, and I'm releasing my software into, say, for example, the European environment or the US environment where the privacy laws are changing, how do I make sure that I'm making compliance choices or software choices that are in compliance with all of these different things? And we have to have everyone involved. So now let's look at business agility and customer centricity. There's some really key aspects of this that are associated with being customer centric. The first is the notion of the execution. And there are 3 actual competencies associated with execution. And I'm going to use the proper terminology. This thing that I'm circulating in SAFe 5.0 is called a competency, and each competency has 3 dimensions. So let's look at Agile product delivery. It's got the dimensions of customer centricity and design thinking. It's got developing in cadence and releasing on demand, and it's got DevOps and the continuous delivery pipeline. And this is where you're going to start to see tooling and infrastructure to help distributed teams be successful. In the strategy element, we've got portfolio management and organizational agility. And finally, the foundation of SAFe is the foundation of Agile, which starts with values, it starts with principles, it starts with mindset, and it starts with leadership and the desire to continue to improve, which is fundamentally associated with learning. Now let's look at these 2 of these competencies in a greater detail, and these are the competencies where I've been honored to spend most of my time in the framework. And let's look at starting with Agile product delivery. Agile product delivery is simply making sure that we're creating the right solution for the right customer at the right time. So therefore, we have to balance the customer and the execution focus. And what I mean by the right solution at the right time is, I want you to imagine that you are a manufacturer of skis, and you've decided with your team to put sensors in the skis and in the ski boots so that people who really care about their performance can get real-time data on how they're tracking down the slopes. Are they, and then giving fine-grained, imagine that you could get, you know, multi-millimeter or centimeter accuracy in terms of the skier going down the slopes, and therefore they could have the perfect line. And given the value of endorsements, you know, athletes winning competitions, et cetera, that could be a pretty valuable product. Well, if you're working on snow skis and you're in the northern hemisphere, it really doesn't make sense to deliver your product in the summer because no one is skiing in the summer. So when we say the right time, what we're really talking about is taking that customer-centric point of view of when is it appropriate to release software or release solutions. Now, there are 3 dimensions that are associated with Agile product delivery. There's customer centricity and design thinking. This is the mindset, understanding who that person is, and design thinking, tools that help me deliver against this person. The other thing that SAFe does is that we separate developing on cadence versus releasing on demand. And I'll use an example from our own software platform for collaboration tools in SAFe. Our team runs 2-week sprints, and 2 weeks is a fairly common recommendation, or 2-week iterations. And so our team is using very regular processes. We have the same time for a daily stand-up. We run 2-week iterations, and humans need to have a development-centric point of view so that they can manage their life. However, our team is releasing software continuously. We have a fully automated CI/CD pipeline, and that pipeline will drop out new releases sometimes multiple times a sprint, a couple of times. We're not really at the dropping out software every hour or every few minutes, but we'll drop out software multiple times in a sprint. And that software drop is decoupled from the development cadence. And that's why we want to really emphasize that we're developing on a cadence that is development-centric and human-centric, but we're releasing on demand, which is customer-centric. Now, how do we do that? Well, first, we have a big focus on DevOps and DevSecOps. And second, we have a set of practices that we use: continuous exploration to understand our customer needs and get telemetry feedback from our products about how they're being used; continuous integration, so I have staging and deployment servers; and finally, continuous deployment that lets me do things like dark launches or canary launches that lets me put software into production in a very safe and reliable manner. Now let's focus a little bit more on customer centricity and design thinking. If you look at design thinking, it's really about understanding the problem space and the solution space. And so there's what we call the double diamond. And the double diamond is both divergent and convergent thinking. I want to explore the problem space so that I understand the problem I want to solve. And once I understand that problem, I want to explore design options. For example, I might use prototyping, and I might create several different kinds of prototypes to help me confirm that the solution that I'm envisioning is actually solving the problem for my customer. Eventually, I'm going to focus in on one of those prototypes and pull it forward into the convergence phase to build it. Now notice that the result when I'm completed is a solution that is desirable. The customer wants it. It's viable. I can build it at a profitable manner, and I can afford to build it, and it's feasible. It doesn't have any technology that's impossible, and I can actually use the tools that my team understands, and it is sustainable over time. I didn't build it once and then watch it go away. I built it, and I was able to drive it up the S-shaped curve of adoption, improving it and helping it grow to be successful. Now, in the continuous delivery pipeline and in the DevOps structure, I have CALMR, which is an acronym we use to describe how the DevOps principles are applied in SAFe. And then we have the continuous delivery pipeline. I mentioned that earlier. It is a set of activities, it's a set of workflows, and it's a set of processes that enable me to take an idea here and build it all the way out so that it's producing value to my customer out here. Now, how I do that in SAFe is through the construct of the Agile release train. For those of you who are joining our webinar who are familiar with SAFe, you know that the Agile release train is our term for a team of teams, typically 5 to 12 teams, but honestly, if you're a startup and you're a little smaller than 5 teams, you can definitely use SAFe. At Contenio, we were a smaller startup, and we definitely did all of the SAFe practices as we were building out our company. Now, this is where the teams work together through a common cadence and through a common structure that we call the program increment, and they align to a single program backlog. So one of the important aspects of good Agile practice at scale is to have a single backlog that multiple teams draw from. And that's, again, where a tool like Swifties can help you in managing the single program backlog, as Mahesh shown, into the individual teams. Now let's look a little bit more at lean portfolio management. And I would also invite participants in the webinar is if you have specific questions, now is the time to start adding those questions, because Mahesh and I definitely will have some time to answer them as we go along. So let's look at lean portfolio management. Lean portfolio management is really, in its simplest incarnation, is how do I spend money in an organization so that I get the results that I'm looking for? Because at the end of the day, we are running businesses, and we have a responsibility to our employees to make a profit so we can pay them a salary, and we have a responsibility to our shareholders to create a return on an investment. We also have a responsibility to the society itself to create an organization that meets the needs of its customers and finds a way to maintain sustainability, not just for its own organization, but for the planet itself. Now, lean portfolio management is the competency that takes the strategy of the organization and the funding that we're going to be given from the enterprise and put into the value streams, into the investments that we're making into our solutions so that we get the results we're looking for. And it has 3, of course, dimensions: the strategy and investment funding, the actual operations of the portfolio, and then governance. How am I making sure that those choices being made are effective. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the strategy and investment funding, which is often where the bulk of the work is in the portfolio management function. And this is that link to the larger enterprise where I want to make sure that we're connecting the portfolio of investments and the portfolio of solutions into the needs of the enterprise. Now, if you're a smaller company, you might only have one portfolio. That's okay. If you're a larger company, you might have multiple portfolios, usually organized into business units or divisions. And again, the structure of the portfolio is going to match the inherent complexity of the enterprise that we're working with. Now, this is where we start to look at the notion of the value stream. The budgets that we have are applied and invested into the value stream because the value stream over here is going to create a solution. So the portfolio is going to manage the solutions, but it's going to fund the value streams. This allows us to look at the solutions that we're creating through their economic impact while also promoting the value of decentralization of control. I can push the money into the value streams, into the arts, and look at how we're funding the investments that we're making in those value streams. Okay, at this point, we wanted to really make sure that we were giving an opportunity to allow all of the participants to ask us questions. And so I'm going to hand this back over to Mahesh, and he's going to share questions that may have come up, and we're going to look at and answer them in real time for everyone on the call.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Luke. This is an excellent introduction to SAFE and to business agility. I just wanted to, since you're talking about the two key sort of practices of SAFE, which is the lean portfolio management and agile product delivery, and as you rightly said, several times, as a small company, it is critical for us to be using these principles, and we have used them successfully to be able to deliver specific products and solutions to our customers. As a small company, as Luke in a way implied, we have a challenge that there are too many things that we are being asked to do. There are too many things that are possibly of value to our customers, and unless we are able to really effectively prioritize them and make sure to find the right things to do at the right time, we are going to have an impossible task at all times in terms of deciding what to build, and then of course building them and delivering them to our customers. So we have really effectively used principles of lean portfolio management to make sure that we prioritize. That we pay attention to what our customers are saying, and we prioritize the right things at the right time, and that's been key to the success of our products being used at our customers. And of course, in terms of agile product delivery, that's sort of our lifeblood. We have to have the ability to deliver, to sort of build on cadence and deliver on release on demand. A lot of our customers still continue to be customers with on-prem behind the firewall installations of our products. We have to therefore support both SaaS as well as on-demand capabilities, and therefore we have really successfully been able to use that to say, okay, we will build on cadence, and we do 2-week sprints, and we continuously build and release product functionality on our own staging servers, and then we deploy them on production, on our own SaaS production every 2 weeks. But our customers are free to take the on-prem customers are free to take the releases as and when they need. So we are able to truly stick to that capability of being able to develop on cadence, release on demand. And of course, all of the underlying capabilities, whether it's test automation, whether it's the DevOps, CI/CD pipeline, all of those technical capabilities had to go hand in hand in order to be able to us to make that kind of a capability available to our customers. So with that, so I just wanted to give you a sense of who are some of our customers and how they've been able to use some of our products based on these capabilities. Folks, please send in your questions using the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and we'll try and answer those as they come in. In the meantime, Luke, I just wanted to start off with something that comes up commonly for most of our customers where we are engaged, which is that while leadership is very aligned in terms of prioritization of work and in terms of sort of understanding that there needs to be focus on prioritizing the right things for the teams to deliver. When it comes to execution, one of the things they kind of fall back on is traditional management method, so to speak, which is setting very hard deadlines in terms of saying, hey, what is going to come when, making commitments upfront on project deliverables, project plans. And the second thing is about resource utilization. There is a tremendous amount of focus on saying, hey, are my people being utilized? Are they all busy, et cetera, et cetera. So you see the traditional sort of thinking around there. How do you see that? And what does SAFE provide some guidance around? How do you pull in leadership and business into this SAFE world and agile thinking world, where everybody's sort of in sync about delivering on cadence on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I heard. Let me make sure that I wrote it down correctly. I heard two sub questions, right? One is this notion of a hard deadline and
Correct.
how we may or may not like them, and the other is about resource utilization and how do we manage the capacity loading of the organization. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let me take the first one. Mahesh, I gotta warn you and all of our listeners, I really struggle with this hard deadline thing in the sense that I am a date-driven agilist.
Oh.
I believe that, and this is over a career that has worked on building lots of products in lots of parts of the world. I used to manage I used to be VP of engineering and product management for an Israeli security company. I used to run a credit card processing bureau for electronic data systems. I've run, various other companies. And the reality is this: there are hard deadlines in life. If you in 2018, and you had to deal with this too, Mahesh, GDPR compliance in Europe was not an option. On May 28th, or I think it was May 25th, 2018, your software had to be GDPR compliant or you had to risk a fine, period. Now you had a choice as a leader, right? You could honor the law, or you could honor the spirit of the law, or you could ignore the law and pay a fine if you were caught. I'm not going to make a judgment on how other people have chosen, but at Contenio, we had many European customers, and we wanted to honor their culture and we wanted to honor their intent to implement privacy. So I was pretty proud that my team implemented GDPR compliance on May 24th, 2018, the day before it was legally required. There are hard deadlines in life. And I think that the more agile approach is to have a very open conversation with the organization to show them where the hard deadline is coming from. Is it driven by market events like a GDPR compliance? Is it driven by the natural structure of the market? Let's say you're building a learning management system for high school students and for grading. Well, you might have to have your software ready by the time the school starts. And I can just keep going on and on and on about natural rhythms that exist within life. Now, some companies, and Mahesh, you might say, well, Luke, Digite doesn't have a market-driven requirement. We can release our software to our customers anytime and provide, in a sense, the same amount of value. And that could be true. And so some companies and some organizations can have, in a sense, a value neutral curve, but most of the time there are external deadlines. And I think that it's not very agile to ignore the idea that there's deadlines in life. I think it's much more agile to have conversations and collaborations about what the meaning of the deadline is and how do we structure our work so that we can fulfill the deadline. And I'll hold on that in case you have any follow-ups, and then I can talk about resource utilization.
No, firstly, I completely agree with you. I think as any company, and especially at Digite as well, we have been clearly impacted by market events. GDPR is a great example. We had to absolutely make sure that we were honoring the law ourselves, and both not only in terms of our product, but also in terms of our marketing and sales practices. We had to make sure that if anybody asked a question, that we were able to demonstrate that we were actually following the law there. So I completely agree with you. We have market events and other types of cycles that periodically will give you deadlines to which you need to deliver to. So absolutely in agreement with that.
Awesome. Well, now let's take a look at the resource utilization. The only way to address resource utilization that I know of is to use actual data. And again, Mahesh, this is where a platform like SwiftEase comes into play. One of the benefits of both Scrum and Kanban is that they are empirically driven ways to look at your organization. You're going to look at what your teams pull into your Kanban system, for example, and you're going to look at, and I'm going to focus on Kanban because I think Kanban systems give you a little bit more data to interact with than pure Scrum. That's just an opinion, and I'm sure Scrum people would disagree, but I'm going to go with Kanban. In Kanban systems, we have the opportunity to look at, how long a given work item has been in the system. We can look at cycle time. We can look at delay time. We can look at handoff. We can look at the ratios of, cumulative flow. And what you start to realize is that when you take a data-driven approach to understanding your business, the data will almost always show that over 80% utilization in any system, human or otherwise, starts to actually create significant delays in throughput in terms of the ability to drop valuable software out to your customers. And so what I would suggest to people is that the resource utilization should be driven based not on opinion or a manager saying, well, I have workers, I want to see them 100% utilized, but instead on data. You want to look at the data that says, am I getting the results I need? What's the cycle time of a concept to production, or sometimes it's called concept to cash? What's the cycle time of getting an idea, getting it through my pipeline, putting it into the customer's hands and getting value or money from it? And in all the data that we have over all of the years that we've been looking at lean manufacturing and at Kanban systems, the data never says that 100% resource utilization is how you get the best throughput.
Absolutely. In fact, since you mentioned the use of data, we in both SwiftEase as well as of our Kanban product, Swift Kanban, we provide the ability to track the WIP limits, the work in progress limits that you can impose to make sure that no teams are overburdened. You can define those WIP limits at the individual level as well. So at an individual level, you can say that across different projects that the person might be involved in, they shouldn't have more than four or five things at a time that they're working on, or less than that even. And I think it can be fairly clearly established. I don't think we have a direct report that focuses on the individuals, loading of in terms of work, but it can be pretty clearly established that if you respect those WIP limits, you're actually able to deliver more than if you didn't, and you provide you put a lot of work on everybody because you are interested in 100% or more than 100% utilization. You can see the quality as well as the throughput or the cycle time of work drop off because they have just too much work that they are not able to focus on or prioritize on their own. So,
and Mahesh, my memory of your tool is that you can get that kind of analysis almost directly through the use of the tool. You don't have to do anything special. It comes right out of SwiftEase.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you don't have to write any kind of additional reporting in order to be able to do that. As people do their work, all you need to do is set those WIP limits, and it'll give you automatically the correlation between cycle time and WIP limit changes. As WIP limit goes up, cycle time drop. Cycle time also goes up, because you suddenly see the lack of flow in the pipeline. So yes, absolutely. So let's take a few of the audience questions as well. So one of the questions that has been asked, and I think that's possibly related to specific types of projects. So when you talk about focusing on the overall value stream and practices such as lean budgeting, are you able to do this on maintenance projects or multi-year projects where the nature of the work and the sort of criticality of deadlines might be slightly different? Long-term maintenance of applications, can you still apply these principles?
Oh, sure, absolutely. In fact, one of the aspects of planning that falls out of the notion of a value stream is that a value stream is intended to be a construct that is long-lived, right? It's very, very rare that an organization is going to create a solution that is very short-term. Now, sometimes we do it, right? Sometimes we'll create a short-term solution to address an urgent need, but most of the time, our solutions are kind of what's driving the business. If I use Scaled Agile as an example, you could argue our courseware is part of our solutions. And if you look at our courses, leading safe and implementing safe has been around for many, many years, and we're continuing to invest and we're continuing to improve in them. So the idea of multi-year portfolio management or multi-year management of items is baked into safe right at the get-go, because we're funding value streams, and those value streams are long-lived. I think it's also important for everyone to realize that in the lean portfolio management competency, we will make a distinction between reserving a resource and allocating a resource. So let me give you an example that Mahesh and I will know very well, because we live in Silicon Valley, which has tons of venture capital. And you can see how this plays out inside other companies, inside a company. If you were an aspiring entrepreneur and you had an interesting idea, you might need, let's say, $500,000 to really build out your prototype and prove it out. And so you might go to an investor in Silicon Valley and say, I would like $500,000 to prove out this idea. Now, the investor will assess your idea and assess your team and say, let's assume that they find your idea worthwhile and they agree, and they give you the $500,000. What happens behind the scenes, though, is in the fund of the investor, they're reserving more money, because if your idea is successful, you're going to need capital to grow the idea, to build it out. So your prototype, your proof point, becomes an actual working system. So the idea of proper portfolio management in a lean manner is that we might reserve money, but we only allocate it as evidence warrants. Now that creates options for the investors, because if your idea doesn't go well, they haven't given you more money than you need, and they can fund a different idea. Similarly, in SAFE at the portfolio level, if I have some ideas that I want to pursue in a given value stream, the value stream in SAFE is going to bring what we call an epic to the portfolio. An epic is used to fund a big idea that requires portfolio oversight. And that epic might be a major new initiative. For example, in our own software platform, we were operating under one hosting provider, and for a variety of reasons, we decided to migrate to a different hosting provider. That was a major initiative, and that major initiative is captured in SAFE as an epic. And we brought it to the portfolio team at the company, And we had our reasons. We had a business case. And of course, they had natural questions. Why do you want to move hosting providers? What's the business motivation? What's the cost to move? What are the savings? What are the benefits created? These are very responsible and natural questions. So both maintenance and multi-year projects are naturally structured or naturally handled in value streams and lean portfolio management.
Perfect, perfect. Another question, which is also, it also deals with some of the questions that I have seen around Agile teams, is the difference in the cadences of activities that are happening upstream versus happening within the team and purely based on dev, test, release. So the question is, when do you think design thinking should be in the product life cycle? Is there a specific, do you do it at a sprint level, or is it sort of an overall philosophy? How do you really ensure that design thinking gets applied as a organizational practice?
Well, and that I think is a very common question, because organizations can trend into, in a sense, inadvertent waterfall behavior, right? They don't mean to be waterfall, but they don't know how to do design in an agile way. And so what happens is they kind of revert to this behavior where Mahesh, I've seen this, where they have design is waterfall, but development is agile, right? I don't know if you've seen that, where they're like, oh, all the designers are going to design everything. And so the way that we resolve that tension in SAFe is through the continuous delivery pipeline practice of continuous exploration, and in the team level work of backlog refinement. So we expect that in every iteration, the team is doing some amount of work on understanding the work that is coming and helping shape it. That work is called backlog refinement. Now, in continuous exploration, we're also expecting that the team is engaging in customers and engaging in the activities that give them the data they need. Now, how do I put that together with design thinking so that I can understand how I can blend, in a sense, the best of both worlds? Let's take a let's take a step back, and let's say that you were good to build a new solution. And Mahesh, let's say that for just for argument's sake, you were going to use Amazon Web Services. And right off the bat, you've made an architectural choice that's going to influence a lot of other choices that you make. It might influence your programming language, or it might influence your database. That's the same kind of influence you get from design thinking. When you look at certain activities like developing a persona tends to be a longer lived artifact that guides the team over multiple releases. Similarly to the programming language that the team uses, right? The team isn't going to change programming languages every release. You're going to start with one and stick with it. So the idea is to have certain artifacts of design thinking modeled after architectural choices because they're longer lived, and then other aspects of design thinking like feedback from customers on how they are using our product, or A/B testing on how to lay out a screen to get optimal usability as part of that more continuous exploration. So both of those are true, and therefore I can integrate design thinking into my agile practices pretty effectively.
Awesome. And I think what we have been able to do internally within Digite has been that we have taken elements of all of the practices that we have around. Of course, we don't have a full SAFe implementation, but because of our support to the different frameworks, we have absorbed practices from different of these frameworks, and we have something that really works for us very well. And we have been able to actually use the principles of design thinking and lean portfolio management across the overall value stream, right from the experience that our visitors get from the time they look at our website and do a test trial of the product, to actually signing up and using the product. So we try and we are always sort of thinking about the continuous evolution of the user's journey as they are experiencing different aspects of digitize services and solutions for them. So
yeah, we did the same thing, Mahesh, at Contenio. Like, we would instrument every page. We would instrument every we also had a web-based app, and so we instrumented both our website and our application, so we could start to look at, when someone hit the website and then they logged in, how many clicks did they have to go through, how long did it take them, and I think that that's one of the real differences in modern development, is that we focus collectively a lot more on product telemetry and data from our products, and making decisions based on actual behavior of our customers, and we can see those data trails, if you will, and make much better decisions from them.
Absolutely, exactly. The instrumentation of the product is also such a critical aspect of getting that feedback continuously as to what is working and what isn't, or what can be improved. Luke, we've come to the bottom of the hour, and I think we'll stop here, and I'll make sure that we respect everybody's time. Folks on the webinar, thank you so much for joining us today to listen to a really fantastic presentation as well as a discussion and some amazing thoughts and ideas from Luke. Luke, always respect your vision and your experience, and of course your ability to get everybody on the same page with some fundamental or sort of basic ways to explain concepts, and I really enjoyed today's session. Any closing thoughts from your side?
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. If you need to connect with us, you have the contact information available for Luke as well as for myself. If you're interested in looking at our products, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to set up something for you as a follow-up. We will be sharing a recording of the webinar pretty soon, and so please watch out for that as well. And we look forward to seeing you again on a new webinar whenever we announce that. Thank you so much, and Luke, thanks, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.